Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's my water. Um, this is not, there's a slope to this. We'll put it down there. Um, I'm Helen, and I'm an Al-Anon. Oh, you gotta let me know where I am. I've never had a blackout, but I might have a blank out. That's why I have this. So I'll try not to read it. Before we get going, I just want you to know if you need to get a drink of water, use the restroom, stand up, go ahead. I'll just keep talking. It won't bother me at all. I'm a retired elementary teacher. I've been trained to ignore that behavior. However, some people like to bring scissors to these things. And if I see you with scissors, I will keep an eye on you. I've been highly trained for that too. So, let's do this. First of all, thank you very much for inviting Al-Anon. Alcoholism is a family disease. We get sick together and we can recover together in our respective programs. So thank you so much for not inviting me, but inviting the message of hope in Al-Anon. So, yeah, woo, yeah, okay. Oh, I can finish now, right? Applause, okay. Just a little bit about me. Larry, kind of my anonymous husband, said a little bit about it, but yeah. We have, my home group is Courage to Change. We meet Sunday nights on Camino Island. It's a good group, real lively. The lights are on, the coffee's hot, the greeters are friendly, and we'll save you a seat. So please come and join us Sunday night, 6 o'clock, Camino Lutheran. I've been in Al-Anon since Larry said 2005. That means I have my 18th Al-Anon birthday. Not all groups in Al-Anon celebrate birthdays. Our group does. That's okay. We're autonomous. It's not so we can pat ourselves on the back and congratulate how recovered we are. It's not that at all. It's so we have a commitment. We made that commitment to continue to go to Al-Anon. We have sponsors, we do service projects, and we show up at our home groups and participate. So we do our birthdays on the 4th Sunday of the month. Please come and join us. And you'll see the program. That's what we're celebrating, the program at work. And we have cake, which makes it kind of fun too. So please join us. I have a sponsor. Oftentimes my sponsor does come to these things, but since she's not here, I'm going to talk about her. I'm pretty sure she broke a tradition. She moved away from me. So she used to live on Camino Island, and we had the same home group. We met regularly. We worked the steps. She's a taskmaster. And all was well until about a few years ago when she moved to the Tri-Cities. I'm pretty sure that's breaking a tradition. Whenever I tell her that, she laughs. My sponsor laughs a lot. However, I am here to say that on Friday mornings, every Friday morning at 8:30, my phone alarm rings, and that is time for me to call my sponsor. You can do a 5th step, you can do a 10th step over the phone, and it works just fine. She also is a retired teacher, so she likes to give me homework. And I know, I don't like being on the other side of the homework, but I do it. So her favorite thing is, did you write about it? And occasionally I actually write about it before I start to whine about it. So we are able to do that, and then we just love each other and we talk. She also likes to give me readings. If you have a one day at a time and you're an Al-Anon, or you have a one day at a time, she really likes the March 1st reading. It's on humility. I'm not sure why she gave it to me. I'm thinking that she just must need it herself. Who knows? But it's a good reading. Check it out. Oh, okay. And I also am privileged to sponsor women. I know that this is how God uses my character defects to show them how not to be, and I'm okay with that too. But and I think some are here tonight. So and they also will report to my sponsor probably. And yes, I'll probably be mentioning my anonymous husband of 42 years. So he's in my home group. So love you, dear. Let's go. There's a line in the big book, it's on page 108, that talks about the strange world of alcoholism where everything is distorted and exaggerated. And that pretty much describes my life with alcoholism. To tell a little bit about it, if we took a field trip, remember I'm a teacher, and we got on Highway 2, started heading east, and continued until we got to the state of Montana, about in the middle of the state, where it is too hot, too cold, too flat, too dry, and the golf courses have snakes. That's how my husband describes it. You would find a little town called Guilford. Well, you turn south and you drive about 7 miles until the pavement ends. And then you head east again for about 1.5 miles on gravel, high grade, and you would find where I grew up. I grew up in a farmhouse that actually was ordered from the Sears catalog in the early 1900s. My grandparents were homesteaders. My mom and dad took over the farm. And they had I have 4 older brothers. They're all hellraisers. I love them all. But and I had a great childhood. It was wonderful growing up there in Montana. I could ride my bike and climb haystacks, which I wasn't supposed to. Climb the barn roof, which I wasn't supposed to. I just had all kinds of animals. I loved it. Great growing up, and I knew I was loved. So my parents were Laura and Jingles. Laura was my mom. She could cook anything. She was legendary for everything she cooked. She did volunteer catering. She cooked so much and mastered all of the Norwegian foods. I should probably point out, my dad was a full-blooded Norwegian, as his parents were, and he had those, beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair. And my dad was nicknamed Jingles. How could you not love Jingles? A guy with that name. He was a farmer through and through. He wore bib overalls. We also had cattle, other livestock. And both of them were so hard workers. I mean, the whole family would have to get out and work. We'd go to the barn twice a day. When it was time for haying, my dad would drive the swather, Mom would drive the baler, and I would drive the truck that my brothers would buck bales on. And if my brothers harassed me too much, I'd pop the clutch on them. So, but we got the haying done. So, but, again, this is my family. I love them. There was one thing, though. Jingles would go to town and under the pretense of getting a part or, getting some oats rolled for the cattle, and he would stop at the Triple T Tavern, and he would stay there a long time. And then he'd drive home, and Laura would not be happy. Now, Jingles was, since he was a native to Guilford, born there, he was totally accepted. Laura, good old boy. Everybody loved Jingles. Laura was a little different. She was 40 miles away, and she was a valley girl, Chinook Valley, and wasn't as accepted. But, it was a dynamic that was loud. Let's put it that way. It's a good thing we lived in the country and the neighbors were far away, because there was a lot of yelling at our house, especially in the evenings. My bedroom was on the second floor of the farmhouse. The heating duct in my bedroom went straight down to the kitchen. And in the mornings, I could hear, quiet murmuring, they'd have soft voices. They would, just a lovely conversation. And I knew, I'm going to go down and say good morning. In the evenings, there would be yelling. I knew I needed to stay upstairs. So while there never was any physical violence, there was just a lot of yelling and swearing. And it was just normal, right? That's what I knew. And pretty much that's the way it was with our neighbors, as far as I knew too. So, and it's important for me to, it's important for you to know that I had really good parents, and that I had a really good upbringing. But when alcoholism was poured into it, it did become distorted and exaggerated. My dad would come in, or I should back up. We didn't have buses in the area that I lived in, and I was 8.5 miles from town. And my brothers would often have, they were quite a bit older anyway, but they would often have jobs after school or sports or girlfriends or whatever. And someone would have to come and get me. And if I was dependent upon my dad, I would sit at the school and I would wait and I would wait. Sometimes, the staff would go home, the janitor would go home, and I would still be at school waiting. I can't imagine that happening nowadays, but back then that was pretty common. The lights would be off, and except for the one light in the front of the school, and there I'd be. I could stay inside. And they did put a phone in later on, but I'd be calling my mom, and she wasn't happy, and she'd be calling the bars, and for a time there were 2 bars, and so finally she would just say, just go find your dad. So I would, walk across town, across the railroad tracks. Guilford's not that big, but walk first to the bank bar and see if he was there, and if he wasn't, then I continue to walk down the hill and to the Triple T. And if there was a pickup truck, usually Ford, often with a cow in the back, yes, then I knew it was Dad, and I was always happy to see him. I'd go into the bar, and I'd sit at the bar stool, and I'd get a Coca-Cola, and if I was really good, a pickled pig's feet. I am part Norwegian, I do like it. And maybe a Slim Jim, and hey, I'd be happy. Actually, I credit my love of reading to my dad in those times, because I learned always have a book with me. I'd crawl into a booth, or I'd go out to the truck and pick up, and I would read. And I still to this day carry a book with me everywhere because I love to read, as did my dad. So I never really thought about any of it being negative or embarrassing until I have this one memory that we were at a basketball game, and if you were in Montana at that time, Class C basketball was like the reason for that a town existed. And my brothers all played basketball. And I remember at this one game, I was there with my mom. Dad was down at the bar, and I was, a little kid, and I was, dorking around the bleachers, and with some friends. And at halftime, or just after halftime of the JV game, the varsity would get up, and my brother was a varsity player, and they wore green blazers back then, and ties, and they were Guilford Bronx, and I just remember everybody, they would stand up, and everybody would applaud, and I was just so proud of my brother, and he'd go in there, and they'd get ready for the varsity game, and And I remember at one point, probably during the varsity game, looking over the only entrance into the gymnasium, and there was my dad, and he had on his overalls, which were dirty, and his, farm implement, probably John Deere cap, and he stood at the door, and his eyes were, unfocused and red, and he was swaying, and I just remember for the first time ever feeling embarrassed. I remember crawling in the bleachers going, oh my gosh, this isn't the way it's supposed to be, is it? And it was hard to resolve the feeling of love and shame. And I think it was then that I started to, kind of learn how to, get an arm's length away from the people that I really love. So anyway, I think one of the things that I learned too, mostly from my mom, was that I had to work twice as hard to be half as good, because she felt that way. And there's that exaggeration that comes with the disease. And that's what I took with me. I was a really, really hard worker. I was focused. I graduated valedictorian of my class of 17. I know. And went away to college. Went to my first year was University of Montana, and I was going to be a journalist. But because I had some good teachers, I got into the School of Journalism my freshman year, and I discovered early on that being a journalist is really stressful. So I decided to transfer schools to Eastern Montana College in Billings and take an occupation that had no stress at all. I decided to be a teacher. Yeah, I found out later. So, and when I was, loved it, did debating, a double major, and when I did my student teaching, I did a program where I would go to Alaska with 3 others, and someone taught music, someone taught visual art, someone taught dance, and I taught drama. And it was a summer program, learned nothing about classrooms or teaching or lesson plans that way, but I met my husband in Pelican, Alaska on the boardwalk on July 3rd, so that was a good thing. So anyway, came back down, married. Larry proposed to me, I think, we met July 3rd. He came down to Glen Rock, Wyoming, where I was teaching, proposed December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, and we married in February. I know, my parents were still going, what? It's whirlwind romance there, but it seems to have worked out. So anyway, we moved to Alaska and to Juneau, and, just started having a family. So we had 3 children, Lucas, Dan, and Laurel. One little story about our oldest son, Lucas, to kind of just set the stage. When he was about 2, his brother Dan was an infant, and I had to go run errands. So I took him out in Juneau, and I went to the drugstore or whatever, and Lucas, wanted to get out of the cart, and so I was helping him out, and he poked me in the eye, lost my contact, swept the floor of the drugstore, couldn't find the contact. Okay, went to the next store. That was Sears, and they had a cabinet display. And while I'm ordering, because back then that's what you did, and when you lived in Alaska, you ordered from Sears, and he was playing around with the cabinet display, and next thing I knew, he's whirling it around, and all the doors are flying off. So they wanted us out of there. So went on to our next spot, the city and borough of Juneau. I needed to pay, I don't know, water bill, whatever. And while I'm, I still have an infant and a 2-year-old, and while I'm trying to make the payment, Lucas sets the fire alarm, pushes it. And I was parked in the fire zone. I know, yeah. A little foreshadowing. Glad I didn't know it at the time, though. So anyway, we moved down in 90, I guess, 1990. We moved down here. Larry's originally from Snohomish. I would be closer to my family in Montana. And, just started off with life again, right? New chapter. So really busy with the kids. They were in all the sports. Lucas excelled at wrestling. He used to practice on his brother and sister excessively, putting them in holds, pinning them down. I used to take credit for some of those moves because that's how I would get him to sleep, is I would have to hold him down, wrestle him to sleep. But he excelled in it later on. And they loved football. Basketball was not as much of a sport for him, but he played. So anyway, life was moving on. When Luke was in middle school, we got a phone call from the principal that our son was caught with alcohol in the locker room. We needed to come and get him. I was the PTA president. Very awkward to go in there. We decided, okay, this is what we're going to do, son. You're, expelled for, 2 weeks or whatever. You're going to go to the job. He had to do some community service. I think we went to the wildlife. And I went with him and had to get into a cage with a scary eagle. And but we're going to see this through because this isn't what you do, son. This isn't how we handle it. Very disappointing. We thought we were doing all the right things. We did scouts, we did sports, we did family. We went to church. We were trying to check all the boxes, right? We're doing it. Well, over the next several years, it was just a roller coaster with our son. We had those high highs. Lucas was a good boy. He really was. He was sweet. He was handsome. He was very well liked. He liked other people. They liked him. He was smart. He graduated the top 10% of his class. He was inquisitive. He was fearless. He was, of all of our kids, he was the most polite. The highs were really high. And then we had the lows. He was determined. He was stubborn. And he was, I think, a little too concerned about others. So he would get into trouble. He had, I think, a size 13 foot, and he would look at me and put that foot not on the line, over the line, and went, yeah, Mom, this is what I'm gonna do. So, but we did our best to be the bad guy parents. This isn't what we do. No, your friends can drink it. Yeah, your friends can drink at their house and they could smoke dope at their house, but we don't do that here, son. We're not going to allow that. And it was a struggle. So it was a war at times at our house. It got so that our other two kids, Dan and Laurel, would tiptoe around. When we first got into Al-Anon, they didn't even know a lot of people didn't even know we had two other kids because all we talked about was Lucas. So, but there were also the phone calls in the middle of the night from the sheriff, which seemed to me that I always answered. I don't know where Larry was sleeping, but I was the one that answered. And having to go to the emergency room in the middle of the night. There were wrecked cars, there were UAs. It's hard taking your son in for UAs. Treatment centers and courts. We would come home early from vacation to go to court because we thought it would look good if we were all there and all dressed up. And sometimes Luke wouldn't even show up. So I always kind of jokingly said, you know you're an Al-Anon when you know at least 5 ways to get bail at 3 a.m. You know how to open letters that come from the court system without actually opening them? I have ways. And on your online favorites on your computer, you have jail registries, because you don't always know which jail they're in. So we had Marysville, Snohomish County. I think we had Kitsap for a while. I don't know. So, sometimes that's the only way we could figure out where he was. And all of this was taking a toll on our family. And on me. I felt like I was just getting wound so tightly. I kind of felt like a bobblehead. I would just, wind me up and I would be going like this. No, 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 no. I also likened it to the walls closing in on me. I found myself in a very dark, cold, lonely place. And I just felt like my heart was frozen. And I did not want to be that mom. I did not want to feel like that for our son. So Lucas went to treatment at sundown, and I couldn't go because I had a school function I had to attend. And so Larry went, and he came home and he said, "We need to go to Al-Anon." I went, okay, because by this time, and I have permission to say this, Larry was crazy. He didn't stop people at Home Depot and tell them what was going on, but if they said, "Hey, how you doing?" then he would tell them what was going on at home. And all he wanted to do was talk about what was going on at home. And I did not want to talk about it. No, I'd had enough, remember? Keep him at arm's length. So anyway, we looked in the phone book. I don't know how many people know what that is anymore, but we looked in the phone book, saw a numbered call, and we went to our first Al-Anon meeting in Lake Stevens. And thank goodness it was there. It's not there anymore. It was in a church basement, of course. There were 4 older women there who look like me now, but they were older back then. And they were like trench coats. Some of them were in trench coats. And one of them looked at me and said, "If you see me in public, don't say a word." And I went, "No problem, not." So, but we heard something there that got us going back to our second meeting, and that was Courage to Change. The lights were on and people were laughing. We hadn't heard laughter at our house in a long, long time. And they were smiling and friendly, and just for an hour and a half, the squirrel cage would slow down and even stop, and I could get a breath. And I found that if I went to more than one meeting a week, it would help even more. So right away, I was told to go to a Big Book workshop. Now, I have to say, the Big Book is not Al-Anon approved literature. So for the record, I did not know that at the time, but I'm here to say that's what I needed. It is the foundation of my program, the Big Book. And there I learned something that I needed. I knew about alcoholism because I'm a teacher. I had to have credits about alcoholism and drug abuse. I've written papers, I've probably done PowerPoints, I've taken tests. But finally, reading through the Big Book with a group, that message of the disease of alcoholism finally went from my head to my heart. I will never understand completely the allergy and the phenomenon of craving, but I could appreciate and have compassion for the loved ones in my life who had the disease of alcoholism, my dad and my son. And I finally started to have compassion for them. By this time, my dad had been gone for several years. And by this time, my son and I, he was living somewhere where, we'd drive up there and, the blinds were pulled and there's, the garbage can full next to the house and it looked all abandoned, and you'd knock on the door and you'd see the curtain part and then it would close and they wouldn't answer. So he just didn't want to talk to us. So I also discovered that by this time I was really seeing my son in 2 dimensions, alcoholic bad, and I needed to see him 3-dimensionally. And that's what I would learn in Al-Anon. So some of the things that I learned was after the first half of the first step, I was just like my dad and my son. I had those resentments, and I had those fears, and I had that anxiety, and I had that spiritual sickness. And it really leveled the playing field, because I did feel like I was up here and they were down there. And I saw them face to face. It was finally in color and not black and white. And I am so grateful for that. So I worked the program, immediately. Step 1, powerless over alcohol. I knew that. At our home growing up, Budweiser always won. So I was powerless over alcohol. I thought I could manage it, because when you grow up that way, that's what you know. That's what you do. So, my coping mechanisms of keeping the people at arm's length and freezing my heart and being crazy. That was how I managed. And then step 2, the God of my understanding. Now, I'm a nice Lutheran girl. Really, I am. And I grew up in the Lutheran church. I was baptized, confirmed, and married in the Lutheran church in Kremlin, Montana. I've outlined sermons. I've gone to Lutheran Bible camp, gone to Sunday school, and, I thought I knew God. But I didn't know a personal God of my understanding until I got permission in Al-Anon. And I know it seems so simple, doesn't it? But it was an awakening for me. And, the God of my understanding is growing. And I appreciate that. I also learned that restoring to sanity meant God's sanity, not Helen's sanity. The bar is really low on Helen's sanity. So I needed that God sanity, and I'm still looking up. And by the time, the 3rd step, I love the 3rd step prayer. When I first got into Al-Anon, I would drive to school clutching my, the Al-Anon bookmarks and say the things, that was on the book. Just for today, I will be, and that was my prayer. And then I started using the 3rd step prayer on my way to school. I remember that, I have to tell this story. One time I was driving to school, and it was conference week, and I had a really tough conference coming up. It was, like one of those where, that kid was like threw chairs and just was not very pleasant, and the mother was, you could see where he got the DNA from, and it was not going to be fun. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm worrying about it, and normally I don't have the radio, and I turned on the radio, and it was Tom Petty, and it was I Won't Back Down, and I'm singing, I won't back down, take me to the gates of hell, and I won't back down. And oh my gosh, I went around the corner, and there was this guy walking a dog, and he was going, ah! And yeah, wake up call. Turned off the radio, calmed down, said my 3rd step prayer, and did survive the conference. But still love the 3rd step prayer. That bondage of self, I can get in it. Those are those walls, that bondage that I found myself in years ago. I can be right back there. And in the 4th and 5th, 4th step, writing out those columns, that's what I learned. Now, I was an English major. I can creative write all the way over. I could tell you all kinds of things about my life, and I can justify just about anything. But when I have that 4-column method that I learned, I don't get to wiggle my way out of things. I just have to write down the facts. And then if I did start to waver a little bit, I had a sponsor who would, keep me to the facts. And that 4th column, what an awakening for that, too. Finding out that I had expectations and I took it personally, and my double standards, and maybe I didn't know there was everything there was to know about the other person because I think I'm a mind reader, and maybe they're doing their best. The last one that I kind of finally got is always funny because it's that self-righteousness. I remember I was at a workshop in Mount Vernon with Randy, and I'm sitting there and we're working on the 4th step, and all of a sudden I go, I'm self-righteous? And everybody laughs. Yeah, just like that. So, because I am. So, and the fears and my harms. Working those steps, opened the door. I made some amends. I made amends to Larry, and I also have to tell a little side story. So, I don't know how much time I have. I forgot to turn it on, so just, tell me. But it was on our 25th anniversary. Don't make amends on your 25th anniversary. We had this really nice place in California. We went there, and it was on the beach, and I was going to make my amends, and so I made them, and then I said, and is there anything else? And he went, yes. Thank goodness our sponsors happened to be in California at the same time because we needed referees. So, but that was for 25. Now we're looking at 42. So, anyway, and I did I made amends to Lucas. It was very awkward. I like textbook kind of things. It was awkward. It did not go well. It was over the phone. It was for something I didn't want to make amends for, but I knew I had to. And so I made amends, and you know what? Our relationship changed. It changed in a big way. So we'd get together with Lucas. He would answer the phone every now and then when we'd call him. He'd call us. One time he called me to ask directions for making tea. This kid never asked me about anything he was drinking, but he wanted to know, Mom, what is the proper way to make tea? We went camping together. So, our life got a lot better. And with the rest of our family, too. Oh, boy. This is the part of my story I always want to change. In May of 2012, we were doing a big book workshop, and Larry and I, and my main purpose for being there was because I knew I needed to make amends to my son, but I didn't know what those amends were. I just didn't know how. I'm an all-or-nothing girl. I'm responsible for everything in the world, including global warming, or I am not responsible for any of that. And I needed to make amends to Lucas, but I didn't know how to do it. Well, on May 7th, 2012, we lost our son, Lucas, to alcoholism and heroin. It was the middle of the afternoon. He decided he had some Irish car bombs, and his friend was coming over. I had talked to him the day before. He said, I love you, Mom. That's how we parted. And he decided to use heroin. We didn't know. We certainly knew about the Crown Royal. We have a bag full of bags. We knew about alcohol in general. We knew about pot. We knew about pills. We didn't know about the heroin. And about the time he died, I was in school. getting ready for science with my third graders. I remember going to Costco afterwards, and I was getting phone calls from our son Dan and Larry going, "Hey Mom, when are you coming home?" And I go, "Oh, I don't know. I saw all these people I'm visiting." And Costco was the last place I really felt normal for a long time. So got home, and they broke the news to me, and it still takes my breath away. The first wave of people to our house were our Al-Anon friends. I had a friend at school. My principal knew we were friends, and anyway, they came over. My sponsor came and sat beside me and told me to breathe. Just kept telling me breathe. She was afraid I was going to pass out. And then the rest of our family came, and I don't remember. It was a blur. So the next day, we went over to Luke's house in Stanwood, and we had to take his vehicles home. Larry went into his closet and found his Letterman's jacket. He was so proud of his Letterman's jacket, wrestling and football. And he put the Letterman's jacket on the passenger side of the car that I was going to drive home. And it was just me and the jacket in the car with me. And on the way home, it finally occurred to me what I wanted to say to him. I wanted to say, "Son, you were enough, just the way you were. As your mom, I always thought it was my job to, help you to do better and, challenge you to reach those goals and motivate you to do this. But I wish I would have said, 'Son, you're just perfect the way you are. We love you.'" For a long time after that, I couldn't remember the words to the Serenity Prayer. I'd start to say them and I'd just blank out. I just couldn't remember. And finally, when I did remember them the first time, I said, "Wisdom to know the truth." I don't know where that came from. I'm sure it came from God. And here's some truths that I know. I know that I have a higher power who is with me all the time. I know that I have a son who is with the God of my understanding, because I put him in one of God's hands and I crawled into the other. Today, our life is pretty good. We've got some things going on right now. I wish it were alcoholism. That's not something an Al-Anon says very often, but I wish we had alcoholism in our family right now. We have crazy, and alcoholism is something I can deal with, not crazy. But we have a good life. We have grandkids, we have great-grandkids, and our youngest great-grandson is named Lucas. Our grandson asked if he could name him Lucas, and of course we agreed. And oh my gosh, the kid is already a hellraiser. Just saying. So anyway, it's going to be wild watching him grow up. I want to end with this, and this is from Courage to Change, one of our daily readers. October 8th, my life is a miracle. When I felt alone and far from hope, I was guided to Al-Anon, where I learned that no situation is really hopeless. Others have been through the pain of coping with a loved one's alcoholism. Okay. They too had known frustration, anger, disappointment, and anxiety, yet had learned to live serene and even happy lives. Through the program, the tools that lead to serenity and the gift of recovery are mine for the taking, along with the support I need. Just as I was guided to Al-Anon, I am guided through recovery, and I continue to be transformed. I see that miracles frequently touch my life. Maybe they always have, but I didn't see them. Today, I am aware of many gifts and wonders because I am actively practicing gratitude. Okay. Today's reminder: when I take time for gratitude, I perceive a better world. Today, I will appreciate the miracles all around me. And you are a miracle. Thank you.